Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into the chill before dawn across the wide Mongolian steppe. The air is thin, dry, and sharp as needles, and your face is the only part of you foolish enough to peek out from beneath your thick felt blanket. You're not sure if you're awake yet or just dreaming about waking up inside a meat freezer because the inside of your yurt feels like one. A soft snore vibrates near your feet. No, not your cousin again. It's one of the goats. Of course it is. Your yurt smells like wool smoke and fermented milk, which is just another way of saying home. The thick walls of felt hold in yesterday's cookfire scent, and a vague whiff of whatever your uncle tried to ferment last week. Outside, the sky isn't quite lit, yet it hovers in that weird blue stage between night and morning. You can hear the wind nudging at the edges of the yurt, not so much howling as whispering threats. You reach for your boots. They are, as expected, frozen into a polite sculpture of their usual selves. As you try to wrestle your feet in, you remember with a groan you forgot to bring them inside again. You won't make that mistake tomorrow. You always say that. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shift the goat aside, it grunts but does not protest, and unlatch the yurt door. Outside, the cold slaps your cheeks with the enthusiasm of an unpaid intern. The horizon stretches in every direction, barren and quiet. There are no trees, no fences, not even a hill to block your view. Just the wild openness of the steppe and that creeping golden wash on the eastern edge. You breathe out, watching your breath spiral into the air, and start trudging toward the goats. They're clustered like a heap of matted rugs tucked together for warmth. You give a soft whistle. One raises its head, stares at you with an expression of both confusion and mild disappointment, and promptly returns to sleep. Your dog, who has somehow managed to remain outside all night without freezing into a popsicle, bounds toward you. It's not a pet. It's more of a co-worker who eats your leftovers and judges your choices. Still, you scratch behind its ear and pretend it's grateful. Somewhere in the distance, you see a faint curl of smoke rise from another yurt. That's probably your cousin Naran, who once tried to race a camel drunk. He didn't win. Historians still argue whether he thought it was a camel or a vending machine. You reach the herd and clap your hands. The goats blink at you. You blink back. For a moment, it's a staring contest. You win because you're holding a stick, and your breakfast depends on their cooperation. The herd finally begins to stir. Hooves crunch against frost-bitten grass. A few bleat in protest. One ambitious goat headbutts your thigh, but it's too early in the day to argue with livestock. You lean down and scoop some dried manure into a basket. You'll need it to relight the fire soon. Poop, nature's forgotten fuel source. As you walk back, your mind drifts. You remember hearing stories from your grandfather about a time when herders carried knives made of sharpened deer, antler, and slept in yurts lined with wolf pelts. Now your knife is stainless steel, and your yurt lining includes a suspiciously floral blanket from a Chinese factory outlet. Still, the rhythm of life hasn't changed that much. Wake 10 milk, gather, sleep, repeat. It's a life that would bore the socks off a Roman senator, and probably bore the socks off you too, if your socks weren't currently somewhere under a goat. You push open the yurt door again and feel that first wave of heat from the embers you banked last night. The fire's almost dead. You drop in the dried dung and give it a little blow. Flames catch slowly, reluctantly. The goat repositions itself closer to the warmth. It has never lifted a hoof to help in its entire life. Your mother is awake now, tying back her hair with a strip of fabric older than you. She pours salty milk tea into a dented metal bowl and hands it to you. It smells like boiled socks and regret, but it's hot and its calories. You nod your thanks and sip. From outside, you hear a yelp. The dog has probably found a marmot, or worse, a neighbor's undercooked boots. You don't check. That's a problem for future you. In the far distance, the first sunbeam finally spills over the land. It turns the dull gray of the steppe into something almost gold. For a second, you allow yourself to feel something close to awe. Then your goat farts, and the moment is gone. You step out again this time, ready for the daily duel, you versus the milk goats. They do not want to be milked. You do not want to be kicked. Somewhere between the two is destiny, and as the sun rises higher, glinting off your tin pail and catching in the steam of your breath, you brace for the day ahead. There's no hurry, just the endless dusty rhythm of herder life, one slow, sleepy moment at a time. You trudge back to the herd with your pail in hand, still warm from the fire and half full of motivation. The goats, on the other hand, have zero motivation. They stand around looking smug, chewing cud like it's bubblegum, and they've just beaten you in a game of intellectual chess. Milking time isn't a routine, it's a standoff. You sit cross-legged beside your best milker, an old gal with a droopy ear and a face like someone who's seen empires fall. She eyes you, shifts her weight, and gives a warning flick of her tail. You reach for her with practiced hands and whisper something encouraging like, "Please don't kick me in the face." Historians still argue whether early nomads used chants, songs, or bribery to get their goats to cooperate, but it's likely some form of quiet pleading was involved. You hum a simple tune anyway, not because it works, but because your grandmother used to do it, and it fills the silence better than cursing. Milk splatters into the tin pail, each drop louder than expected in the frosty quiet. The rhythm settles in squirt, sigh, squirt, shift. Your fingers ache from the cold, and you wish not for the first time that goat teats came with a warming feature. Maybe in the future, AI goats will solve this problem. For now, it's just you, your calloused hands, and a stubborn mammal whose only contribution to civilization is cheese and occasional side-eye. You move down the line. One goat lifts her leg mid-squeeze, knocking the pail sideways. Of course she does. You mutter something about sending her to goat boarding school. She blinks at you, slowly chewing with malicious serenity. In the distance, the wind picks up. You glance up and scan the horizon. A dust trail, just a breeze stirring the dead grass. No wolves, no riders, no travelers. Not yet. Mongolian mornings often start empty and finish loud. Back in the day, roughly the 13th century, this land was stomping ground for Genghis Khan's messengers' horsemen, riding so fast their horses died beneath them. The YAM system, it was called, a medieval postal service fueled by stamina urgency and questionable saddle hygiene. You try to imagine one of those riders skidding to a halt beside your herd and yelling, "You got milk," before galloping off again. The goat currently under your hands chooses this moment to sneeze directly into your face. You close your eyes, inhale slowly, and remember that enlightenment is achieved through suffering. Eventually, the milking ends. Your pail is mostly full, your patience mostly drained. You lug it back toward the yurt, slipping slightly on a frozen patch that you could swear was not there 5 minutes ago. The dog trots beside you, sniffing at your boots like it's checking your work. Inside, your mother strains the milk through an old cloth that might once have been a curtain or a flag or someone's shirt. It's hard to tell now. The milk is then poured into a large leather baggie, hanging by the fire, an inflated stomach to be precise. This is where it will ferment into arag, the Mongolian national drink, also known as milk that bites back. The process is centuries old. They say even Marco Polo mentioned it in his journals, though it's unclear if he was impressed or traumatized. You watch as your mother rhythmically kneads the bag over and over, murmuring to herself. The bag must be agitated for hours, yes, hours, to get the proper ferment. This might be the only form of exercise goats indirectly provide. You sip your tea again and look at your fingers. already red stiff, lined with milk residue. You wonder if people in other parts of the world wake up and wrestle goats before breakfast. Probably not. Aye, somewhere someone is waking up to a croissant and filtered sunshine. You are waking up to goat spit on your sleeve. Your father enters the yurt carrying a bundle of dried brush and cow dung. He grunts a hello and tosses it near the fire. You know what's next. It's time to collect more fuel. You grab the woven basket still faintly warm from the last batch and head back outside. You hate this part. The gathering of poop is not, shall we say, glamorous, but dried dung is efficient, renewable, and strangely satisfying to stack. It's like earthy Legos for grown-ups. Your boots crunch through the half-frozen grass as you scan the pasture. Goat pellets litter the field like Morse code from the gods. The smell doesn't bother you anymore, it's background noise now, like your aunt's never-ending theories about why every neighbor's daughter is cursed. You squat and start picking one pat at a time. The dog follows, sniffing occasionally and disturbingly sampling one or two. You pretend not to notice. As you work, your thoughts wander. This is a job that's been done for generations. 1,000 years ago, some ancestor of yours knelt in this same posture under this same sky, cursing similar goats. You wonder if they too fantasized about becoming a spice trader or maybe a silk merchant in Samarkand, something that didn't involve dung. Your basket is half full when you spot something strange, hoofprints, but not from goats. Wider, heavier, could be a stray yak, could be trouble. You follow the prints for a few meters until they vanish near a patch of dry grass. No broken fences, no disturbed dirt. You decide it's probably nothing, or at worst something tomorrow you can worry about. You finish filling the basket and start heading back. The wind has picked up, and with it the sky takes on that hazy shimmer that means don't get too comfortable. It's not exactly a storm warning, but it's not a hug either. By the time you return to the yurt, the fire is strong again. The interior glows orange, flickering off the hide wall panels. Your mother is kneeling by the pot, stirring goat innards into a thick stew. You don't ask which part, you already know it's all the parts. You unload the basket dust off your hands and look out once more over the pasture. The goats are beginning to wander. The sun is higher now, and the real work is about to begin. But for a fleeting moment you let yourself just stand there. You take in the smells, smoke wool tea dung, and the sounds whined bleats a far-off eagle cry. This is your life. Not glamorous, not easy, but solid, rooted in dirt and wind and animals with no respect for personal boundaries. You sigh, stretch your back, glance toward the herd. One of the goats is standing on top of the woodpile again. Of course it is. The sun is now comfortably above the horizon, and with it, your goats have decided it's the perfect time to test the limits of your patience. They scatter like woolly confetti the moment you take a single step toward them. You sigh, grab your herding stick, which is more for show than actual goat control, and begin the daily ritual, the great goat roundup. Your dog senses the shift. She launches ahead, ears perked tail, rigid like an exclamation mark, doing wide zigzag patterns across the pasture. You follow at a steady pace, boots sinking into the uneven terrain. Herding isn't about speed, it's about psychology, and unfortunately these goats know yours intimately. One goat, the ringleader with the bent horn, has already started trotting away from the group, glancing back to make sure you're watching. He's not escaping, he's performing. You adjust course and angle in from the side, herding him back with exaggerated confidence you do not feel. Goats, for the record, do not respect humans. They merely tolerate you if you happen to show up with food or the ability to scratch a hard-to-reach spot. Otherwise, you are just another tall obstacle in their otherwise goat-centric universe. This particular morning, your herd has decided to split into 3 clusters, each drifting in different directions. One group seems to be chasing a bird, one is trying to climb onto a rocky outcrop, and one seems to be attempting a group nap mid-field. You are now a project manager for 37 individual freelancing goats. You start with the nappers. Waving your arms and muttering vaguely threatening lullaby lyrics, you coax them to their feet. They move, slowly bleating their complaints. One sits down again immediately. That one will need to be carried. Again, you hoist the lazy goat over your shoulders in a move that looks much more majestic in folk paintings than it feels in real life. The weight settles across your spine like a sack of judgment. You trudge back toward the others, muttering to yourself, "This is your gym. This is your cardio. This is your goat-lifting personal record." Your dog circles around to the wanderers, giving sharp barks and nips at their heels. The goats bleat in protest, but they obey her more readily than they obey you. This fact does not escape your notice, and you wonder, not for the first time, if the dog should be in charge and you should be fetching the sticks. Once the herd is mostly in formation, a term used loosely here, you begin guiding them toward fresh grazing. The steppe stretches ahead in a shallow dip, dotted with tufts of coarse grass and occasional wildflowers. It's dry, crunchy, not particularly nutritious, but it's what you've got. You walk slowly, letting the goats fan out within reason. Too far and one might get distracted by a butterfly and vanish into legend. Too close and fights break out. Goat spacing is apparently a precise science. As you move, your stick taps the earth with a soft rhythm. A beat, a guide, a reminder that you're still here, still tethered to land and herd. Your mind drifts. You wonder about the goats of ancient times, those herded by Scythians, Sogdians, or even the mysterious Xiongnu people. What did they do when a goat climbed a cliff face and refused to come down? Historians still debate how mobile those early tribes were and whether their herding techniques involved more cooperation or more yelling. Your yelling in the present moment is intermittent but heartfelt. Eventually, the goats settle. Heads down, they graze with single-minded focus, biting at the brittle stems like their gourmet salad. You find a flat stone nearby, sit down, and finally exhale. This is one of the few quiet moments in the day. You pull out a strip of dried meat from your coat pocket and gnaw on it, trying not to crack a tooth. The taste is salty, tough, and faintly smoky. If it were any drier, it would qualify as a building material. Above you, a hawk circles. The sky is a flawless blue, stretching without interruption across the entire dome of your world. You tip your hat back and let the breeze skim your cheeks. Your dog comes over tongue-lolling and plops down beside you. You toss her a small piece of meat, which she swallows without chewing. Respect. A small bell tinkles and you glance up. One goat predictably has wandered into a small ditch and is now looking around as if surprised by the existence of gravity. You rise, retrieve him, and gently push him back into the fold. The afternoon sun begins to lean slightly, shifting shadows across the land. You stand, stretch your back, and begin moving again. Herding isn't just one moment, it's an ongoing state of awareness. You're constantly counting, scanning, adjusting. You spot a limp. You spot two goats locked in a slow-motion headbutt duel. You spot the dog digging a hole for no clear reason. You correct everything with a combination of noise, gesture, and a sort of pleading telepathy. It's not glamorous, but it is meditative. In the far distance, another herder's figure dots the horizon. You squint, trying to guess the gait. Looks like your uncle again. The one who talks to goats like they're old friends and claims they once answered back. You wave. He doesn't wave back. He might be talking to the goats right now. You start humming soft and low, a traditional melody one you heard at a Nadam festival, once carried by an old throat singer who sounded like the wind arguing with itself. The melody floats out across the field. Your goats, unfazed, continue grazing. Some herders swear that singing keeps goats calmer. Others say it keeps the herder calmer, which is probably the real point. Still, as the notes trail into the breeze and vanish, you feel a little more human, a little more rooted. You pass a patch of old hoof prints too deep to be recent, probably your herd from last week, but then you spot another set much smaller with claws. Could be a fox, could be something worse. You file it away for later. For now, daylight is your ally and the goats still have grass to chew. You gather them again. Time to head back slowly. The sun has started its descent. Not fast, not urgent, but you feel it, that long pull toward dusk. You whistle once short, sharp, and the dog springs up, already reading your intent. She begins weaving behind the goats, urging them into motion. And so you walk again, herd ahead, sky above, stick in hand. A figure among many who've done this before you. Goat herding might not be history's headline act, but it's been playing in the background for millennia. By the time you reach the yurt again, the sun is hanging lower, casting long golden shadows across the steppe. The goats settle near the perimeter, sprawling into clusters like students avoiding assigned seating. You do a quick head count. 1, 2, 36. Where's Bent Horn? You scan the landscape, and sure enough, he's perched on top of a barrel near the fence line, staring at the horizon like he's considering a second career as a monk. You make your way over and give him a nudge. He hops down without protest. You suspect he just wanted the view. Your stomach growls. It's breakfast time technically, though it's already mid-morning. Meals here run on effort, not clocks. You duck back into the yurt where warmth greets you like an old, slightly damp sweater. Your mother has been busy. A pot simmers near the fire, and the smell hits you, salty, sour, unmistakably Mongolian. You sit cross-legged, and a steaming bowl of sutaitsai, salted milk tea, is pressed into your hands. It's milky and thin, more broth than tea, with just enough salt to confuse your taste buds. You sip, and the heat trails down your throat, lighting a tiny furnace in your belly. Next comes the Arl dried curd, hardened to near rock consistency. You pop a piece in your mouth and gnaw cautiously. It resists all attempts to be chewed. You contemplate if it could double as goat armor. Arul is one of those ancient foods that survived not because it tastes good, but because it doesn't die. It can outlive the owner and possibly even the yurt. Your mother joins you, humming softly, her fingers spinning wool into thread. You chew and sip until your jaw starts to feel like it's done leg day. The conversation is light, mostly about the dog, the weather, and whether that one goat is pregnant or just arrogant. Outside, the wind picks up again, rustling the yurt walls with a sound like soft applause. Your father returns from checking the water barrels. He grunts a greeting and sits with a groan, dropping his coat beside him. In his hand is a small pouch dried berries he traded for last week. A luxury. He offers you one. You bite into it and instantly regret it. Sour as betrayal, tough as an old boot, and somehow sticky enough to glue your molars together. Delicious. You finish your meal and rise, stretching your back. Breakfast is over, time for the next chore. You step outside and the sun hits your face like a warm slap. The air has shifted, it's drier now, dustier. You grab your small toolkit and make your way toward the fence. Technically, it's not a fence in the suburban sense. It's more a suggestion of boundary, a collection of posts, twine wire, and ambition. And it's very broken. The wind here doesn't blow, it bullies. Overnight, it seems to have played tug-of-war with the western section. 2 posts are leaning, the wire is drooping, and one goat is already halfway through the gap, probably planning a dramatic escape. You shoo the goat back and set to work. The ground is hard, resisting your efforts to dig the post deeper. You mutter at it. It mutters back through the creak of old roots. You finally wedge the post straight with a mix of rocks, dirt, and a generous helping of spit-based hope. Next comes the twine. You loop it tight, fingers tugging teeth, biting the end when your hands are full. You use your herding stick, now moonlighting as a temporary hammer, to tap things into place. The stick has a name, of course, Gregor, named after the only goat that ever tried to eat your hat and failed. Gregor isn't much of a hammer, but he's reliable. You back up hands on hips and admire your work. The fence looks only slightly less pitiful than before, which is an improvement by step standards. You check for gaps, for signs of mischief, and for lurking goats with big dreams. All clear for now. As you walk back toward the yurt, you spot your little brother trailing behind a goat trying to ride it. Ooh. The goat unsurprisingly disapproves. You call out, half laughing, half concerned, for the family dental plan. He tumbles off into the dust and gives you a thumbs up. Kids bounce, it's fine. You return to the yurt to wash your hands. With water from a cracked basin, the soap is homemade, smells like goat, and stings a little. You splash your face and wipe dry on a cloth that may have once been part of a camel saddle. Now comes your favorite chore, watching. Just watching. You sit on a rock near the herd and let your eyes wander. The steppe stretches infinitely, a soft ripple of grass and dust. No cars, no wires, just space. Time slows down, or maybe it just finally matches your pace. You notice the small things, how one goat always follows another, how the dog pretends not to nap, how the clouds overhead drift like half-forgotten thoughts. You lean back, hands behind you, and let the sun do the heavy lifting. And then you hear it. A soft clinking bell. Hoofbeats. The faint clatter of metal and leather. You sit up. Someone is coming. The sound of hoofbeats draws closer, slow and deliberate. You rise, dust off your hands, and squint toward the horizon. There, approaching from the south, is a lone rider silhouetted against the shimmering heat of the midday steppe. The figure sits tall in the saddle, swaying slightly with each step of the horse, though saddle may be generous. It looks more like a blanket strapped to a determined pony. Your dog stands too, ears up, tail low, not barking, not nervous, just alert. As the rider comes into clearer view, you recognize the broad felt hat, the unmistakable shape of an iron kettle dangling from his saddle horn, and the glint of polished metal at his waist. Yep, tax collector. You sigh and mutter something your grandmother would pretend not to hear. The taxman is early this year. He rides up with a nod, dismounts slowly. He's old, maybe older than your grandfather's boots, and gives a grunt that might be a greeting or a complaint about his hip. He gestures toward your herd. You nod. Of course, time for the goat census. Mongolia has used versions of this practice for centuries. During the reign of the Khagans, livestock was not only taxed, but counted, catalogued, and sometimes even redistributed. Historians still argue whether this was efficient or just a medieval excuse for wandering around with clipboards carved from wood. You guide him toward the herd, while your dog follows at a cautious distance, sniffing at the man's boots when he's not looking. The taxman pulls out a small ledger, a ragged notebook bound with string, and begins to count. He points with his finger and mutters numbers under his breath. One goat walks behind him and then reappears in front again, instantly throwing off his count. He starts over. You offer to help. He waves you off with the dignity of a man who has counted goats since before you were born. Meanwhile, your little brother appears with a half-melted candy and offers it to the taxman. He declines politely, but pats the kid's head with a gloved hand. Your mother emerges from the yurt with tea. He accepts it, squatting in the shade of a stack of dried dung, sipping carefully. The conversation is minimal, just nods and grunts and the occasional eyebrow raise. You offer a small wheel of cheese as a goodwill gesture. It's the kind of offering that's not legally required but socially expected. The taxman pockets it, then returns to counting. You watch the goats graze completely unaware they're part of a bureaucratic ritual older than paper. When he finishes, he marks something in the ledger, hands you a strip of cloth with an inked stamp on it, your proof of tax compliance, and mounts his horse again with a slow groan. He tips his hat and rides off the way he came, leaving behind only hoofprints, the faint scent of boiled leather, and a slight dent in your cheese reserves. You stare at the strip of stamped cloth, wondering if anyone ever checks these. You fold it and tuck it into the pouch with last year's and the year before that. You've never known anyone to question a goat count, but it feels important anyway, part of the rhythm, part of the theater of steppe life. As the rider disappears behind a fold, in the land your dog flops down beside you with a heavy sigh. You sit too. A soft wind stirs your hair, the kind that sneaks under your collar, and whispers of storms 2 days away. You decide it's time to check the fence line again, not because you think it's broken, but because it's something to do. A moment of peace feels suspicious. You head out, walking, slowly trailing your fingers along the posts. You pass the spot where you patched the western side earlier, still holding. No goats dangling upside down or tangled in twine. A small victory. As you round the far corner, you spot something strange, something shiny, half buried in the dirt. You kneel and pull it out. A spoon, old, dented, decorated with what might be a wolf motif. Could be a lost relic. Could be trash from last week's lunch. Hard to tell. You pocket it anyway. Back near the yurt, your cousin Narambata is arriving on his pony, which looks just as annoyed as he does. He waves lazily and dismounts without ceremony. He always shows up when there's food or gossip, and judging by the smile on his face, he's expecting both. You exchange the usual greetings, a head nod, a grunt, a muttered joke about how thin your goats look. You reply with a jab about his riding skills and the time he fell into the water barrel. He claims the barrel moved. You agree, just to keep the peace. Inside, the yurt tea is being poured again. Your cousin brings news from the nearest settlement. Nothing dramatic. A wedding, a lost cow. Someone's daughter left for the city to work in a bakery. Someone else's son came back from the city to become a herder again. The eternal cycle. You trade cheese for batteries. He trades batteries for stories. It's not written anywhere, but it's the economy that runs the world out here. Cheese, gossip, and goodwill. Before he leaves, he gives you a pouch of dried mushrooms and a warning about wolves spotted north of the hills. You nod. That's tomorrow's worry. He mounts up and rides off with a lazy wave. His pony huffs as if relieved. The afternoon deepens. Shadows stretch long across the grass. Your goats begin to shuffle, some lying down, some wandering toward the east fence. You follow not because they need it, but because you're a herder. That's what you do. The light fades slowly. Your stomach growls again. Inside, the smell of stew returns richer this time. You enter, shake off the dust, and sink to the floor. Your mother ladles thick soup into bowls, fat noodles, chunks of organ meat. It's not delicate cuisine, but it sticks to your ribs and doesn't ask many questions. You eat slowly, savoring the warmth. The dog curls near the doortail, twitching in dreams. Your little brother babbles a story about how he saw a goat jump higher than a tree. You nod impressed and ask what the goat said afterward. He thinks for a second. It said, "I'm tired now." Seems reasonable. You smile. Full belly, quiet yurt. A fading sky outside painted in soft purples and oranges. Tomorrow will bring more, counting more, chasing more, chewing. But for now, you let yourself settle into the stillness. As twilight rolls lazily across the steppe, you rise from the warmth of the yurt and head back outside. The goats, now slightly plumper with grass and mischief, lounge in half-sleeping clusters. Some stand their jaws, moving like slow, stubborn machines. Others lie curled in gentle mounds, their hooves tucked beneath them, eyes half closed in satisfaction or possibly existential boredom. You tap your herding stick, Gregor, twice on the ground and hum an old tune under your breath. Not for them, for you. You've been meaning to repair one of the watering troughs, but instead you pause and let your gaze drift to the sky. The first stars are out peeking past long lilac-colored clouds. The moon, still shy, is low on the horizon, fat and yellow like a wheel of underripe cheese. Somewhere nearby, a goat lets out a short, startled bleat. You glance left. It's not danger, just old Grandma again. She's crouched beside one of the younger goats, whispering something in that gravelly, legendary voice of hers. You wander over. Still talking to the goats, you ask, keeping your tone respectful. No one mocks Grandma. She doesn't look up. They listen better than your uncle, she replies. You sit beside her. The goat in question has a limp, slight, but persistent. Grandma notices everything. She unwraps a piece of leather cord, her knife, and what looks like a thimble made from bone. You recognize this ritual. It's her version of surgery, more intuitive than formal, but shockingly effective. She gestures for you to hold the goat's head. You do gently. The animal sighs and rests against your shoulder, resigned to its fate. With the practiced hands of someone who's stitched more creatures than most doctors have seen, she inspects the hoof. A stone lodged near the soft edge. A cut, slight infection. She cleans it with boiled herbs from a pouch that smells like pine and bitterness, then begins binding it. You know, she mutters back, when I was your age, we didn't use leather for this. We used tendon strips. Stronger, tougher, smelled worse. You nod. Why don't we still use them? She snorts. Because your father got squeamish and married your mother, who has opinions. That tracks. You glance up as she finishes. The goat's eyes are glazed but calm. Grandma pats its side, mutters a blessing or maybe a threat, and moves on to the next one. You let the goat go. It limps away slower but clearly relieved. You suspect Grandma's hands are magic, but no one says it out loud. As you stand to stretch, she offers you the knife. Not as a gift, just to hold. You do. The blade is worn, the handle smooth from decades of use. The metal's been sharpened so many times it's almost delicate. It hums faintly with the memory of years, blood, and goat complaints. You hand it back carefully. She nods and says nothing. That's her way of saying, I trust you not to ruin this entire lineage. You walk together back to the yurt. The path is lit only by the dim glow of the fire inside, flickering through the cracks. The air smells like windgrass and faint iron. You don't speak. You don't need to. Once inside, she retires to her cot with the ease of someone who's had exactly enough of the world today. You step back out. Your shift isn't over yet. You whistle low and your dog joins you again. Together you circle the perimeter, checking the herd, scanning the sky. Night on the steppe is less quiet than you'd think. There are distant howls, the screech of some night bird, the occasional pop of dry grass contracting in the cold. You stop near a small rise in the land and sit again. The goats are dark shapes now, some asleep, some blinking at nothing. Your dog settles beside you, leaning her head against your knee. You scratch her ears. You begin to hum. Old herding songs. Melodies passed down not because they work, but because they fill the night with something besides the ache in your knees. One of the songs is about a goat who fell in love with the moon and tried to climb the sky. Historians still argue whether it's metaphor or a really badly understood weather event. You keep humming. You wonder what it would be like to live somewhere else. A place with roads, with walls, with neighbors that didn't chew their own feet. But even as you think it, you know you'd miss this. The stars, the silence, the warm weight of a dog against your leg. Above you, the Milky Way begins to unfurl, a river of light, a trail of frost in the sky. Your grandmother once said those were the hoofprints of the divine goat who carried the first soul to the heavens. You were 7 when she told you that. You believed her then. You mostly believe her still. A shooting star cuts across the black. You don't make a wish. You're not 12. But you do whisper a quiet thanks. The wind shifts. Somewhere far off something stirs. A rustle, a crack, nothing serious. You rise slowly, pat your dog, and begin guiding the last few goats toward the closer side of the camp. You tap Gregor softly on the ground, not to herd, but just to hear the sound. The herd is calmer now, sleepy, trusting, or maybe just resigned. You check the fence one last time, still holding. Inside the yurt, your brother is already snoring. Grandma, too. Your father is muttering in his sleep, something about saddles and cabbage. You sit just outside the door for a bit, wrapped in a blanket that smells like fire and wool and age. Your eyes close, not from exhaustion, but from peace. Out here, it's not about adventure, not about fame, not about change. It's about rhythm, repetition, the quiet glory of doing the same thing today as your ancestors did yesterday. You lie back against the earth, the stars reflected in your eyes. And beside you, your dog sighs, tail twitching once before sleep takes her too. Morning always begins with light, but it's not always gentle. Today it stabs through the felt seams of the yurt like a needle through old fabric. Your eyes crack open to find the goat from last night has reasserted itself as your roommate. It's lying exactly where your feet should be chewing in its sleep. You briefly consider kicking it out, but decide it's too early to enter a political struggle you'll surely lose. You sit up slowly, joints cracking in protest. The fire has died down to nothing but the memory of heat. Someone, probably your father, has already left. His boots are gone, and there's a faint trail of dust where he dragged something heavy out the door. Possibly water barrels, possibly your brother. Outside, the sounds of the herd rising drift, in hooves on dry soil, the low bleats of hungry goats, the metallic clatter of something tipping over. You pull on your boots, they're miraculously unfrozen this time, and step into the blinding glare of a fresh step morning. Today, you're not starting with goats. You're heading to your cousin's yurt, the one 2 valleys over, the one who brews yak butter tea that could power a small city if harnessed correctly. You whistle for your dog, who emerges from beneath a cart with straw in her ears and something suspiciously bone-shaped in her mouth. She trots beside you as you mount your pony. Well, it's technically a very enthusiastic donkey, but in Mongolian spirit, you choose to call it a pony. You ride. The steppe flows beneath you in ripples of beige and gold. The air smells like dust and distant water. The sun is climbing fast, promising heat later, but for now it's crisp and bearable. As you ride, you pass a small cairn, a stack of stones placed there decades ago to mark a safe passage for travelers. You add a pebble as tradition demands and offer a quick nod of respect. Historians still argue whether these piles were purely practical or secretly spiritual, but either way, you don't skip the ritual. You arrive at your cousin's yurt just as he's scolding his son for throwing dung at a chicken. You wave. He grunts. His yurt smells like burnt onions and ambition. Inside, it's chaos. 3 children chasing each other with ladles, a pot boiling over, and a single very confused-looking goat on the roof. You sit anyway. He pours you yak butter tea. It smells like commitment. The butter floats on top, thick and oily. You stir it with the handle of your spoon and try not to think about what it reminds you of. You drink. It's salty sour, strangely warm and oddly comforting, like drinking a well-worn boot that's been aged in love. You look tired, your cousin says, which is Mongolian for I want to gossip. You shrug. Taxman came yesterday. He nods, grim. Did he ask about my second yurt? You shake your head. Good, he says, and then changes the subject before you can ask what that was about. The conversation drifts. A neighbor's herd lost 3 goats to wolves. Someone's cartwheel snapped on the river crossing, and someone else is making their own vodka from old turnips. Standard countryside headlines. You offer him the dried mushrooms from your cousin Naranbatar in exchange for some spare rope and a handful of nail-like goat treats. He agrees, but only after asking if Naranbatar still owes him 2 belts and a song. You nod. Of course he does. The tray done, you step outside again. The goat is still on the roof. It seems happier than most goats on the ground. You decide not to interfere. Your cousin walks with you a short way back, pointing out a new fence line he's experimenting with, using braided grass. It looks impressive now. You give it 6 days, you part ways at the bend in the trail. He slaps your donkey's flank with brotherly affection, and you nearly fall off. Laughter echoes behind you as you regain control. Back on the open plain, you take your time. No rush today. The goats will wait. The sun warms your face. A buzzard circles above. The wind carries a scent you can't quite place. Wild onions, or maybe your own socks. Hard to say. You pass a lone shepherd sitting with a small radio pressed to his ear. He nods. You nod. Neither of you speaks. He's listening to some pop station from Ulaanbaatar. A strange contrast, modern beats drifting through ancient winds. Back at your camp, the goats are still lazing in the sun like small furry landlords. Your mother greets you with a cloth bundle of dumplings wrapped in a smile. Your brother is trying to lasso a chicken. He is failing. You settle into the midday lull. This is the softest part of the day. Heat rising, insects humming your limbs, just heavy enough to resist movement. The dog lies beside you, panting, her nose twitching in sleep. You close your eyes. Not fully asleep, not fully awake. A drifting, floating place. A memoryless hour. You dream briefly of a goat in a tuxedo. He asks for his rent and dances away. You wake with a start, only to find a chicken pecking your elbow and the dog chewing your hat. Back to reality, and somewhere in the distance a cloud gathers. Just one, but large enough to make you pause. Storms here can rise fast, bite hard, and vanish again before anyone gets a decent story out of them. You stand, dust yourself off. The sky is shifting, and soon the goats will too. The cloud on the horizon isn't a threat yet, just a suggestion. But out here on the steppe, suggestions are taken seriously. You squint up at the sky. The winds change direction, sliding in sideways across your face like an uninvited guest with cold hands. You call to your dog, who lifts her head, blinks once, and trots to your side. Together you make your way to the eastern edge of the camp, where the goats have begun to gather near the salt lick. Most are still lazily chewing or nudging one another with blunt horns. A few have taken interest in a bush that seems neither edible nor particularly interesting, but they're committed to the bit. And then, as if summoned by the scent of bureaucracy, a shape appears in the distance, moving fast, kicking up dust and heading your way. You stiffen. It's not a neighbor, it's not a herder, it's the tax collector. Again, but this time he's not alone. A second rider follows behind him, wrapped in layers of blue silk and brown wool. The kind of outfit that means 2 things: authority and the ability to afford extra fabric. You glance toward your father, who has already stepped outside, arms crossed. Grandma emerges too, carrying her knife, not the one for butchering, the one for discussions. The taxman reins in his horse and nods curtly. "This is my cousin Natsagdorj," he says. "He's with the local census office." You blink. "We already did a count," you reply. Natsagdorj smiles without showing teeth. "Yes, but there's been a revision." Historians still argue whether Mongolian nomads ever appreciated being revised by government officials. The general consensus leans toward not really. The next 20 minutes are filled with paperwork questions and an uncomfortable amount of goat-related math. You're asked how many were born this spring, how many you sold, how many are ambiguous. You weren't aware goats could be ambiguous. Meanwhile, your little brother is behind the yurt, mimicking the entire scene for an imaginary audience of chickens. His impression of Natsagdorj is both spot on and legally actionable. Your mother brings out tea, butter heavy and aggressive. The official sips it and coughs. "This is very traditional," he says. Thank you, your mother replies in a tone that ends conversations and careers. Eventually they rise, offer stiff farewells, and depart in a blur of hoofbeats and unreadable glances. As soon as they're out of sight, your father mutters something about city people and fence posts. Grandma mutters something unrepeatable. You return to the herd. The clouds are closer now, darker. The goats have noticed too. They begin to shift, restless. They sense weather before it arrives like living barometers with bad attitudes. You call out short and sharp. The dog snaps to action, rounding the edge of the herd. You grab Gregor and begin the process. Tighten the outer perimeter call in the stragglers, tap, tap, tap on the ground. To nudge the rhythm of motion, you whistle 3 times. 1 long, 2 short. A signal that says, storm's coming, let's not do anything stupid today. The goats respond. Kind of. One tries to climb a pile of firewood. Another circles your legs and bleats at full volume. A third appears to have forgotten what direction means. But slowly the mass begins to move. The wind strengthens. Dust kicks up in dry swirls. Your hat threatens to leave you, but you clutch it down with one hand while wrangling a surprisingly agile goat with the other. You guide them toward the inner paddock, crude walls made of rocks, wood, and repurposed regrets. It's not much, but it blocks the worst of the gusts. The first drop of rain hits your cheek, then another. And then the sky opens. Rain slaps the earth like a drumbeat gone wild. The goats bleat, some in protest, some in confusion. You move faster, barking commands, pointing, tapping Gregor like he's a conductor's baton. Your dog weaves through hooves and puddles, soaked but focused. Lightning flashes, the world pauses for a breath. Then thunder follows, loud, deep, shaking the very bones of the ground. You feel it in your chest, like someone knocking on your ribs from the inside. You get the last goat inside the paddock and latch the gate. Water is pooling around your boots now, and the sky looks like it's trying to erase the land from memory. You dive under the yurt's awning, dripping exhausted. Inside, the fire has been reignited. Your grandmother is spooning stew into bowls. Your father is checking the roof beams. Your brother is dramatically reenacting your heroism with a sock puppet and a spilled cup of milk. You sit shivering slightly, and someone places a warm cup in your hands. You sip. It tastes like the storm outside never happened. Mongolia's weather doesn't apologize. It doesn't build slowly. It arrives like a punch, then vanishes like a guilty ghost. By nightfall, the rain has softened to a whisper. The goats are dry. The sky is apologizing in stars. You step outside one more time, just to check. The air smells clean now, dirt grass and ozone. The kind of smell that means everything is still standing. You walk the perimeter, you touch the fence. You count the goats by flashlight. 1, 2, 37. Wait. 37. You count again. 37. You only own 36. You lean in closer to the last goat. It's chewing, slowly watching you. You don't recognize it. You sigh, defeated. A neighbor's goat has snuck in again. You'll deal with it tomorrow. Tonight, the storm is gone, and you are still here. Morning returns like an old friend, one that doesn't knock and has no concept of personal space. You wake to the unmistakable sound of something being chewed. Loudly, near your face. The mystery goat from last night has made itself very comfortable. It's standing in the center of the yurt, one leg tucked under, casually gnawing on your brother's school book. No one seems surprised, least of all the goat. You shoo it outside. It resists with all the determination of an animal that knows you can't prove ownership without a proper goat census. Finally, it trots out tail high with entitlement. You suspect this goat pays taxes somewhere else. Outside, the land glistens. The storm has washed everything clean. The grass sparkles with droplets. The puddles reflect the sky like little accidental mirrors. The wind is soft, now warm. You breathe in, and it feels like starting over. But of course, there's work to do. The fence, your personal nemesis, has suffered. A post has leaned dramatically to one side like it's trying to retire early. You squint at the damage, grab Gregor the stick, and begin your inspection. One of the ropes has snapped. The twine you used with confidence, may we recall, has unraveled under pressure. You sigh. Your cousin warned you about that. You'd like to say he told you gently, but no. He told you while laughing and juggling two dumplings. You tighten the knots, replace the twine, wedge the post back into place. With rocks, and brace it with the stubborn determination of someone who's been outwitted by livestock before. The goats, meanwhile, are enjoying the post-storm buffet. Rain brings out the good grass, juicier, greener, slightly less like chewing the underside of a carpet. They munch loudly, tails flicking, eyes half-lidded in pleasure. You wish you could feel that kind of joy from eating wet salad. You spot the extra goat again, still there, still pretending like it's part of the group. You walk over, hands on hips. Whose goat are you? You ask aloud. The goat stares. You sigh and give it a small pat. Fine. Temporary member. Somewhere to the north you hear a distant neigh and the creaking of wheels. A trader's cart, perhaps. You walk towards the sound. This is the day you make your way to the Gur Bazaar, a term that makes it sound grander than it is. Really, it's a field where nomads gather once a week to trade everything from goat cheese to spare batteries, news from far away, and the occasional musical instrument that nobody knows how to play. You saddle up your donkey, who looks at you like this was not part of her retirement plan, and tie a few items into your trade bundle. 2 wheels of cheese, 1 small sack of wool, and a pair of worn boots your cousin left behind 2 summers ago. The road to the bazaar is long but familiar. You pass shrines made of stone and scraps of blue cloth. You nod at them all. Tradition says each deserves a greeting, whether it's for the sky spirits, ancestral herders, or just really bored eagles. No one quite agrees. Historians still debate whether these were places of prayer or simply the world's most committed roadside art project. At the halfway mark, you pass a woman walking with 3 goats in tow, all wearing bells and mild expressions of confusion. You exchange nods and a joke about how the wind never carries the good goats away, only the stubborn ones. She laughs and offers you a strip of dried fruit. It's sour enough to wake the dead. By the time you reach the market, the field is alive with color. Yurts pitched in uneven rows. Smoke from cooking fires curls upward like lazy questions. Children run wild, a dog chases a duck, and someone is shouting about the price of fermented mare's milk. You tether your donkey and begin the ritual slow-circuit glance at goods. Don't look too eager. You spot a radio, sun-powered, held together with wire and a prayer. You point. The seller eyes your cheese. A deal is made. You walk away with the radio, 2 bars of soap, and a red ribbon you don't need but felt compelled to buy. A man plays the Morin core, the horsehead fiddle, its sound long and low, like the wind singing to itself. You pause. That music always finds something inside you, some old place in your bones that remembers campfires and cold mornings. You meet an old friend, swap gossip. She says the wolves have moved east, that someone's son got a scholarship to a university in Russia, that someone else built a yurt with windows. Real glass. Fancy. You ask if she's seen your extra goat. She laughs. You mean the diplomat? Apparently it's infamous for visiting camps and refusing to leave. A wanderer, a goat of the people. You consider charging it rent. By afternoon, the clouds return, not with rain, just with presence. You pack up, mount your donkey, and begin the slow ride home. The radio hangs from your saddle. The red ribbon is now tied to your dog's tail, which she seems to accept as her new identity. Back at camp, the goats welcome you with their usual blend of indifference and indignation. The fence holds. The extra goat is back, lying regally near the salt. Of course it is. You enter the yurt, unpack your finds, and set the radio near the fire. You fiddle with the dial. Static, then music. A modern pop song drifts out, bright, silly, completely out of place. Your little brother dances. Your father blinks like he's seen a ghost. Grandma says it's noise. You smile. The world is changing, even out here. But some things stay the same. You step outside as the wind picks up again. The evening deepens. The stars will return soon. And somewhere in the dark, the diplomat goat plots its next move. Evening on the steppe arrives quietly, like a shy visitor slipping in through the back flap of your yurt. The sky turns to velvet. The horizon burns with that warm orange glow you never tire of, and the goats begin their nightly shuffle toward preferred sleeping positions. Some curl, some stretch, some stand stubbornly, until they simply fall asleep where they are mid-thought. You take a moment to breathe it all in. Then you hear it, the unmistakable sound of clanging metal, followed by a very specific kind of goat-related panic. You whirl around just in time to see 3 goats galloping in your direction at full tilt ears, back eyes wild, and behind them, toppling sideways in slow, painful fashion, is your new radio. You lunge. Too late. It hits the ground with a dramatic crunch that sounds suspiciously like you should have bought the warranty. Silence. The goats stop running. They chew grass casually, as if none of this had anything to do with them. You squat next to the radio and examine the damage. The casing's cracked, the dial's gone, and the tiny antenna sticks out at an odd, accusing angle. You sigh. You'll try to fix it tomorrow with wire glue and a deeply misplaced sense of optimism. For now, you need something that won't break when stared at aggressively. Like dinner, you duck back inside the yurt. Your mother is folding dough. Tonight's meal is kushur, deep-fried meat pies, a favorite across Mongolia and especially beloved by people who've spent the day being emotionally betrayed by goats. You help with the filling minced mutton, onion, garlic, salt, and just enough black pepper to feel vaguely exciting. The smell fills the air as the first ones hit the oil, crisping to golden perfection. You eat 3. Your brother eats 5 and then declares he's now as strong as 10 goats. You suggest he try lifting one. He declines. After dinner, your father pours arag into a cup and offers you a sip. You accept, knowing it'll taste like sour yogurt blended with warm carbonated socks. But somehow it works. It's the kind of drink that grows on you, and then grows a bit more, possibly into a fungus. You sit by the fire as the wind flutters the yurt's sides. Grandma tells a story, an old one, about a man who rode across the entire steppe to find the goat that stole his wife's scarf. The goat, it turns out, had hidden it in a cave to trade for salt. You're not sure if the story is a metaphor or just a deeply personal vendetta disguised as folklore. Either way, it ends with laughter and someone muttering, "That sounds like my goat." The coals glow red. The yurt hums with quiet. Outside, the goats have all finally settled, except the diplomat who is standing on top of your woodpile again, scanning the darkness like a woolen philosopher. You step out into the night, boots crunching softly on the dry grass. The stars are fully out now, blanketing the sky in quiet radiance. You tilt your head back. Out here, there are no lights to dull the view. The sky is overwhelming, like a silent ocean inverted. You make your way toward the edge of the camp where the older goats sleep in a dense huddle. You sit near them, not to guard, just to be. This is when it feels the most timeless. You imagine just for a moment that you're not in the 21st century, that your coat isn't stitched with synthetic thread, and your boots weren't made in a factory. That you're sitting here 200 years ago. Same land, same stars, same stubborn herd. The dog joins you, dropping beside you with a grunt. Her ears flick as she listens to the wind. You stroke her fur. She leans into your hand. A shooting star arcs overhead. You don't wish on it. You've got nothing to ask for tonight. But you do whisper again a quiet thanks. The peace doesn't last. A bleat erupts from the far side of the herd, followed by a thump, a grunt, and the unmistakable sound of a goat falling into something it shouldn't. You groan and rise, grabbing Gregor. The diplomat goat is once again inside the water barrel. Not entirely, but enough to cause concern. You tug him out gently, his soggy wool slapping wetly against your arms. He shakes like a wet dog, coating you in surprise droplets. The dog sneezes dramatically. You guide him back to the sleeping area. He follows with great dignity, as though this was his idea. As you settle back down, Grandma's voice calls softly from the yurt. Bring your socks in, or they'll freeze like last time. You look down. One sock is still outside, draped over a post, like a forgotten treaty. You retrieve it. You return inside. The fire's down to embers again. You curl up in your corner, pulling the heavy blanket over your shoulders. The wind taps gently at the yurt walls. Your brother is already snoring. Your father is humming in his sleep. Your mother shifts slightly, murmuring something about milk. You close your eyes. Outside, the goats dream their goat dreams. Grass, cliffs, possibly rebellion, and above it all, the stars keep watch, unblinking, ancient, and entirely indifferent. The first thing you hear is nothing. It's too quiet. You sit up, fast heart, doing that half-asleep panic thump. The yurt is still. No snoring, no dog, no wind even. Just silence. And that's not normal. You pull on your boots and step outside. The air is cool, the sky pale with early dawn, but it's not the temperature that unsettles you. It's the absence of goat noise. Then you see it. The gate to the paddock is wide open. You stare at it for a moment, your brain quietly buffering. Then it clicks. The goats are gone. Gone. All of them. Except no wait, two are still here. Your oldest nanny goat, bless her tired joints, and the diplomat, of course, who is somehow asleep inside an overturned wash basin. You mutter something that's not quite a curse, but definitely not poetry, and start scanning the land. Tracks. You need tracks. You find them almost immediately, fresh hoofprints, leading eastward in a chaotic spaghetti of paths. Your dog appears beside you, yawns, stretches, and looks up with that familiar, "We're doing this again" expression. "Yes," you whisper, "we are doing this again." You grab Gregor, sling your canteen over your shoulder, and begin the chase. The sun is just crawling over the hills as you follow the trail. The prints are clear, dozens of hooves, not a single sense of direction. At one point they split into 3 routes. You squint, you sniff, you listen. You pick the middle trail because it smells the most like betrayal. An hour in, you find the first one curled in a bush, chewing happily, clearly unaware that anything is amiss. You tether her with a strip of rope and continue. The next goat you spot is standing on a small rise, staring into the distance like a captain lost at sea. You call out. She blinks, chews, then turns and walks the other way. You chase, you trip, you get a mouthful of dust and a new appreciation for gravity, but you catch her. 2 down, 34 to go. Eventually you find a group of 6 grazing near a dry creek bed. They regard you with the mild curiosity of people being asked to attend a meeting they don't remember scheduling. You give them the speech, back to the camp. Now they blink. You wave Gregor. They move. You begin herding them back, picking up stragglers along the way. Some come willingly. Some require negotiation. One tries to jump over your head. 3 hours in, you have 19 goats and an emotional support headache. You break for lunch, which consists of a hardened dumpling from your coat pocket and some of last night's arrog. The dumpling cracks a molar. The arrog numbs the pain. Your dog takes this opportunity to nap in the shade. You join her just for a few minutes, letting the sky turn slowly above you. You dream briefly of a goat mayor giving a speech about hay distribution. You wake to bleating. You jolt up, relieved it's not another escape. Your uncle is there, riding toward you with 3 goats trailing behind his horse like awkward children. He grins. Lost something, you nod. About 20 things. Figured, he says, tossing you a water skin. They came past my camp at dawn. Looked like they were planning a coup. Together you wrangle the new arrivals and head back toward camp. As you approach, you see the final miracle, the rest of the herd already returning on their own, as if nothing happened. Just a scenic morning walk, perhaps. You herd them all into the paddock again. This time you triple-check the latch. Then you sit on a rock and glare at them. They blink at you innocently, as if to say, "What, we were networking." Later, over tea, you and your uncle recount the tale to your mother, who shakes her head and blames your father. He blames the wind. Your brother blames the diplomat goat, who is now wearing one of your hats and sitting in the doorway like a visiting dignitary. Your grandmother, listening quietly, finally speaks. "In the old days, we tied their feet together if they got too clever." You all nod, slightly terrified. Evening returns, this time without theatrics. You make the rounds. All goats accounted for. The fence is holding. The gate is sealed. The sun slips behind the hills like a satisfied merchant. You settle near the fire with your dog and your hat retrieved from the diplomat, who relinquished it only after you offered a handful of arhul. You poke at the coals, watching sparks lift into the night like tiny stars trying to escape gravity. You think about the goats out there in the dark bellies, full brains, empty dreams, simple. You envy them a little. You lean back, look up at the sky. And for a moment, just one, the world feels like a place where everything is right where it should be, except your second-best boots. You'll find them tomorrow, probably near the water barrel. The next morning, your brother bursts into the yurt like a goat-shaped missile. "They're fighting again," he yells, then trips over the dog, who groans in protest, but does not get up. You don't ask who they are. You already know. You grab Gregor. Outside, 2 of the younger bucks are locked in a forehead-to-forehead wrestling match of epic pettiness. They're not hurting each other yet, but their hooves are digging furrows into the ground, and a 3rd goat has gathered nearby, chewing grass and providing silent commentary. You sigh. These duels always happen this time of year. Hormones, hierarchy, and hay, all in uncomfortable proximity. You separate them with your usual approach, a firm shout, a dramatic stomp, and a well-placed tap from Gregor. One goat huffs and retreats. The other throws you a look that suggests he's considering a career in interpretive dance instead. The rest of the herd is watching. You wonder if they're learning something or just enjoying the show. You've barely turned around when your grandmother appears behind you, holding a bowl and wearing her surgery face. "Time to fix the kid's hoof," she says simply. "Ah, yes, today is goat hoof repair day." You locate the patient, a small, twitchy male with a limp and a vendetta against being touched. Catching him takes 5 minutes, 3 near misses, and 1 unfortunate headbutt to your knee. Eventually, you corner him between a barrel and the salt block. He freezes. You pounce. Grandma's already set up a makeshift surgical theater, an upside-down stool, a jug of hot water, and her ancient knife. The kid bleats once in protest, but then settles under her touch. She hums while she works the same low melody she used during birth's shearing and once when pulling a carrot from a toddler's nose. The hoof is chipped and cracked. She trims it with steady hands, then applies a paste of unknown origin and a strip of leather. "You have to talk to it," she says without looking up. "The hoof?" "No, the goat." "You do." "Everything's going to be fine," you say, gently. "You're very brave, and I'm sorry for yesterday's haircut. That was not personal." The goat sighs and leans into your lap. Grandma smiles like a sorcerer who's just summoned a minor miracle. Once it's done, you release him back into the herd. He struts a bit, limping less, and rams a bucket just to reassert dominance. All is well. Grandma heads back inside, muttering about young people and dull knives. You sit down beside the water barrel where, yes, your missing boot is half submerged, and take a moment to process the day so far. That moment is interrupted by the sound of hooves. A rider approaches, this time a woman. You recognize her, Tungalag, a traveling merchant with a knack for charm and very questionable stories. She dismounts and ties her horse, then waves. I heard you had a goat census situation, and also some cheese. You offer her a wheel. She offers you a book. It's a paperback battered with a picture of a camel and an alien spaceship on the cover. You trade instantly. You sit together in the shade, drinking tea, reading lines aloud from the book. It's a sci-fi story set in a parallel desert where nomads herd electric sheep and communicate by humming through metal tubes. None of it makes sense, but all of it is fascinating. She tells you the latest news from the western steppe, a wedding where the bride rode a yak, a herder, who swears he met a ghost shaped like a gopher, and a rumor that one man trained his goats to respond to claps. Historians would love that one if it were true. Do yours respond to anything she asks? You shrug, occasionally guilt. She laughs and tosses you a dried apricot. You haven't had fruit in weeks. It tastes like sunlight filtered through a dream. As she rides off later, you tie the book into a plastic bag and hang it from a rafter, safe from goats and curious brothers. The rest of the day unfolds in slow, satisfying rhythm, patching a torn saddle, mending a water jug, helping your mother hang the laundry made entirely of wool and hope. By late afternoon, you gather the goats again for feeding. You scatter salt and grain in small piles. Most of the goats dive in head first, except the diplomat goat. Of course, he's standing beside a wooden box, looking into it like he's reading a poem. You peek in. It's empty. You close it. He opens it again. You walk away. That evening after dinner, the family gathers under the open sky. Your brother insists on telling a joke he made up himself. It involves 3 goats, a thunderstorm, and a sock puppet. It makes no sense, but you all laugh anyway. You lean back on your elbows, your hat over your eyes, and listen as your grandmother starts singing an old lullaby, soft and slow, the kind her mother sang before radios, before roads, before the idea that goats might one day cause emotional damage. The stars bloom overhead. The diplomat lies down at last. Even your father smiles, and for just a little while everything rests. Dawn drips slowly across the sky, pale gold spreading like melted butter over a rugged pancake of earth. You wake to a peculiar sound, half snore, half honk. You sit up and find your brother trying to imitate a swan for reasons unknown. The dog looks unimpressed. You step outside and stretch. The air is brisk, crisp enough to make your breath visible in soft puffs. The ground underfoot is dry again, the storm long gone, leaving behind only the sweet scent of clean earth, and one very muddy goat who apparently spent the night rolling in a puddle. You've got a new task today, collecting kindling for the fire. Not the dried dung you usually use, that's good for heat, not for cooking. No, today is meat drying day, and that needs a cleaner flame. Wood it is. There's no forest, of course. Trees on the steppe are rare, stubborn things. What you're really after is driftwood, bits of scrub, and rootless branches washed down by ancient rivers or abandoned by wandering carts. You set off on foot with the sack over your shoulder, Gregor in one hand, and the dog ahead of you nose to the ground like she's auditioning for a nature documentary. You find your first piece halfway buried under a patch of wild sage. It's dry, knotted, perfect. Into the sack it goes. You keep walking, eyes scanning the land rhythm, slow and easy. You find a rusty horseshoe, 2 feathers, a broken ladle, and a cluster of wild onions. You pocket the onions. They'll spice up tonight's stew. You pocket the ladle too, just in case it still holds memories. As you walk, your mind drifts. You think about how this land always gives you exactly what it wants, not more, not less. You can't force it, you can only accept. That's probably a metaphor, but it's too early to get philosophical. Eventually your sack is full and you head back. The sun is higher now, painting long shadows that stretch out behind you like soft, sleepy guardians. Back at camp, your mother is already preparing the meat, long strips of goat and sheep hung on a wooden frame near the yurt. Your grandmother tests the fire's heat with her palm. You add the kindling and coax the flames higher, just enough to smoke, not burn. The smell rises, rich, earthy, sharp. It clings to your hair, your clothes, your skin. Later, everything you own will smell like dried meat. You're okay with that. As the meat dries, you take on another job, checking the herd for signs of injury or illness. You move slowly through them, hand on backs, eyes on hooves. It's part inspection, part conversation. You murmur greetings, ask questions, crack jokes. They mostly ignore you, except the diplomat goat who follows you the entire time, tail wagging slightly, as if to say, I could do your job better. At one point, you find a young nanny goat limping. It's not serious, just a bruise maybe. You wrap her leg gently, give her a treat, and whisper something about avoiding stampedes next time. She sneezes in your face. You accept the terms. By midday, the fire is low and steady, the meat curling into thin red twists as it dries. Your brother sits nearby, carving a stick with a rock, claiming it's a sword. You nod respectfully. Every night starts somewhere. Your father joins you with a wooden bowl and sits without speaking. He offers you a chunk of something soft and white, fresh cheese. It's salty, tangy, and slightly squeaky against your teeth. You eat in silence, side by side, both chewing like philosophers with nowhere else to be. Then come the clouds. Not dark or dangerous, just wide and white, casting dappled shade across the camp. You lie on your back and let your eyes trace the shapes. One looks like a camel, one like a bowl, one suspiciously like the diplomat goat wearing a crown. See that one, your brother says. It's you, holding a goat over your head like a hero. You laugh. That's not how heroism works. He shrugs. It is out here, and maybe he's right. Later, you help your mother hang new ropes for the laundry. You repair a cracked water gourd with beeswax and string. You mend a saddlebag with a needle the size of your pinky finger. These aren't chores, they're rituals. Movements passed down through hands and years. Ways of saying, we were here. We did what was needed. Evening comes soft and gold. You pack the dried meat into a cloth sack, tying it tight and tucking it into the storage crate. Grandma inspects your knots and grunts in approval. High praise. Dinner is stew full of wild onions and satisfaction. You eat outside legs stretched, watching the sky bleed into a deepening blue. The goats are quiet. The wind hums a lullaby only the land knows the words to. Your brother falls asleep mid-sentence. Your mother covers him with a wool blanket. Your father sips tea. The dog snores. You sit in silence. The stars blink into being. You smile. Another day down. Another thread in the endless tapestry of goat hooves, smoke, and sun. And somewhere behind you, the diplomat goat gently nudges the sack of meat and sighs as if to say, it could use more salt. There's a peculiar stillness to the morning, a kind of hush that sits heavy on the land, as if the steppe itself has decided to sleep in. You wake slowly, not to any particular sound, but to the absence of urgency. No bleating, no barking, no wind. Inside the yurt, everything glows with the soft light of dawn filtered through felt. Your grandmother is already awake, crouched near the fire, stirring something in a pot that smells faintly of herbs and mystery. You dress slowly, every motion relaxed, as if time has stretched itself out to let you savor this hour. Outside, the air is cool, not cold, just enough to wake your skin. You step into it and immediately understand why everything is so quiet. The fog has come. It rolls over the land like a pale tide, thick and silver, blanketing everything in softness. The goats are just vague blobs in the mist, their shapes ghost-like, their movement muffled. You can barely see the paddock fence 10 paces out. Your dog appears beside you like a summoned spirit tongue, lolling tail swaying lazily. She doesn't bark. There's no need. The fog seems to silence even her instincts. You stand together listening. In the distance, a horse snorts. A bell tinkles softly. Maybe from your camp, maybe not. Your brother runs past, arms out like wings, pretending to be a cloud dragon. You let him go. This is the kind of morning where even rules take a break. With the goats reluctant to move and the fog reluctant to lift you, pivot to indoor tasks. Today's repair day. You bring out the saddles, cracked, dusty, worn in all the usual places. You sit cross-legged outside the yurt, surrounded by leather straps, thread, and the scent of oil. You work slowly, letting your hands remember what your mind doesn't need to think about. As you stitch a torn strap, you recall a story your grandmother told you about her grandfather, a man who repaired saddles so perfectly it was said they could make any horse run faster. Historians would scoff, of course, but you like the idea that skill can charm speed. You oil the buckles, you test the reins, you patch a corner with fabric from a coat too worn to wear but too full of memory to throw away. Your mother joins you to mend clothes. She works with tight, precise stitches, humming under her breath. You don't talk much, just sit side by side, your work synchronized like a duet played with needles. By midday, the fog is beginning to lift. Shapes return. The goats emerge from the white like explorers returning from a polar expedition. One has managed to wear a feed bag like a hat. You remove it gently and pat his head. He stares at you as if this were entirely your fault. You whistle, and slowly the herd begins to move. The ground is soft beneath your boots as you guide them toward the grazing field. You walk in slow arcs, tapping Gregor occasionally, your stick echoing like punctuation in the drifting quiet. There's no rush, no storm coming, no tax collector on the horizon. Just you, the goats, the dog, and the slowly clearing sky. You pause near a small rise and spot a bird high, dark, circling, a steppe eagle maybe, or just a crow with dreams. You wonder what it sees from up there. Just dots, dust. A boy with a stick and some goats. Back at camp, your father is fixing the wheelbarrow. Your brother is drawing shapes in the dirt with a feather. The diplomat goat is trying to drink tea from an unattended cup. You redirect him with a cluck of the tongue and a gentle nudge. He walks away offended as if you've misunderstood his diplomatic mission. You take your lunch outside, a round of bread, a sliver of hard cheese, and a cup of tea that tastes mostly of goat smoke and memory. You sit beneath the one tree nearby, a squat, twisted thing that seems to survive purely out of spite, and listen to the land breathe. After lunch, your uncle appears riding a cart piled with firewood and theories. He talks of trade rumors, a man who claims to have seen a two-headed goat again, and the possibility of an early frost. He also gives you a tin cup engraved with a horse and a sun. Found it near the river, he says. Might be cursed. Use it wisely. You accept the cup with due reverence. The afternoon drifts by in a rhythm of small tasks, checking the knots in the fence, trimming the dog's claws, teaching your brother how to balance on one foot while holding a goat. He fails gloriously. As the sun begins to dip, your mother calls everyone for dinner. A thick soup with dumplings, wild herbs, and just enough salt to make your lips remember summer. You eat by firelight. The air is warmer now. The fog has fully retreated, leaving behind a clean, open silence. Your grandmother tells another story, this one about a goat who refused to follow the herd and instead became a prophet. No one believed him until he correctly predicted a rainstorm. Even then, the other goats refused to listen. He eventually left, and became a spirit that guides lost travelers. You glance at the diplomat goat. He winks. Later, you lie beneath the stars, counting satellites and trying to remember the names of constellations. You forget most. You name new ones. The broken radio, the one-eyed goat, the sock that vanished. Your brother lies beside you, already asleep. Your dog's breathing slows. The fire burns low, and as you drift off, you feel the step beneath you steady and eternal, holding all your days in its patient hands. Your final morning of this stretch on the steppe begins not with the sun, but with the smell of smoke. Not danger, just your father already boiling water before the sky has even brightened. You sit up slowly, blanket falling from your shoulders like a discarded promise. Outside, the faint pinks of dawn stretch over the curve of the earth. This is your favorite time of day. Before the goats bleat, before the dog starts patrolling, before your brother wakes and begins asking questions no mortal can answer. You pull on your boots and step outside. Everything is soaked in gold. The land lies quiet and open like a stage before the actors arrive. The only movement is a distant bird riding a thermal and the faint sway of your laundry flapping on the line like lazy flags. You wander out to the herd. Most are still asleep. One chews dreamily, probably in the middle of a fantasy where the salt block is infinite. Another lies with her head resting on a rock, clearly an oddball. And then there's the diplomat goat on top of the cardigan, staring into the middle distance like he's contemplating the meaning of dew. You tap Gregor gently on the ground and hum the same old tune. The goats rise, stretch, nuzzle one another, and begin the slow shuffle toward the grazing pasture. Today there's no real work to do. The fence is holding, the weather is clear, the supplies are full. Even the radio somehow has been half repaired and now offers bursts of static-flavored music when the sun hits its panel just right. So for once, you take the luxury of doing nothing in particular. You walk, no goal, no urgency. Just you, the grass underfoot, and the sky above doing its ancient show of light. You find a spot under a rocky outcrop and sit. Your dog lies beside you, chin on her paws, eyes half-lidded. You take out the weird sci-fi book the merchant gave you and read a few more pages. It's completely nonsensical, something about time-traveling camels and space yurts, but somehow it fits. At one point you look up and realize you've been sitting there for nearly an hour. Back at camp, your family is going about their routines like dancers in a slow, familiar waltz. Your brother is trying to invent a new game involving dried dung a stick and dubious physics. Your mother is folding cloth, your father is muttering about axle grease, and Grandma is sharpening her knife, possibly just for fun. Later in the afternoon, a neighbor rides by with a basket of dried fish and an offer to trade for buttons. You trade buttons and also a story and also a complaint about one of your goats who keeps trying to eat the yurt flap. The neighbor laughs. That's how you know they're smart, he says. Or plotting something, you reply. You both nod solemn as philosophers. Evening comes on slow feet. You gather the goats not because they need herding, but because it feels right. You whistle. They come. You hum. They follow. It's a kind of trust built over endless days of chasing, feeding, separating, rescuing, and forgiving. The diplomat goat lingers near the edge, then walks in at the last minute like a celebrity making a fashionably late entrance. The dog rounds up the straggler's tail, swishing in practiced satisfaction. At dinner, your mother brings out a surprise dried apricots saved from a recent trade. You eat them, slowly savoring each bite like it might vanish back into dream. Your grandmother tells one last story about a herder who fell asleep in the pasture and woke up 1,000 years in the future, surrounded by robots that still couldn't herd goats properly. Some things, she says, never change. And then finally, it's time to sleep. The fire burns low. You lie back under the stars one more time, letting their light fall on your face like ancient whispers. The air is still. The goats mumble in their dreams. Your dog snuggles close. Your breath slows, and the step holds you gently. Wind down. The stars are soft now. They shimmer above you, distant and unblinking, painting the sky with their quiet witness. You feel the weight of the day of many days settling into your limbs like warm sand. The fire crackles low beside the yurt, its glow reaching out in flickers and fading pulses. Each breath is slower now. You can feel the earth beneath you, steady and unchanged. The same step your ancestors once walked, the same sky they once whispered to before sleep. And in this moment, there's no tomorrow, no goats to chase, no fences to mend, just this breath-heartbeat stars. The wind picks up slightly, a gentle hush, brushing past the fabric walls of the yurt. It's not cold, not sharp, just enough to carry the scent of the grass, the goats, and the fire's final smoke. You curl beneath your blanket, the fabric warm, familiar. Your dog sighs beside you. The yurt creaks slightly. Someone in the camp stirs, then settles again. Everything is soft. Everything is fading. You let your thoughts drift, no destination, no urgency. Just memories and fragments of stories, floaty and light. The kind of stories the stars keep for you until you're ready to dream them again. Out here, there's no rush. Out here, the world moves slowly, patiently, like the grazing herd, like the rising sun, like time itself walking beside you. Your eyes close gently. The last thing you hear is the diplomat goat letting out a sleepy snort and shifting in the straw. The world darkens, and you sleep